honor to introduce Pavel. So he's been many years at ETH Zurich and is now assistant professor at SUTD. And in particular, the topic of his presentation is something that is, I think, fundamentally important in the blockchain world, because Bitcoin ultimately is actually a timestamping service. So the talk will be about towards more reliable Bitcoin's timestamps, which is actually the core of what Bitcoin provides nowadays. So thank you so much, Pavel.
Thank you very much, Artur, for a nice introduction. So as said, my name is Pavel, and today I will talk about freshness properties provided by blockchain platforms, in particular Bitcoin, and in general about Bitcoin timestamps. So I will start with a very short introduction to blockchain, because I assume that probably you know that. So finally, we have this distributed and open database, which has this nice properties like append only, which is transparent, which is open and decentralized. So obviously it enabled applications like cryptocurrency and smart contracts. However, also people start looking at many other applications. And one very interesting family are time-sensitive applications. So for instance, any kind of certificates, like academic certificates, it would be good to know when they got appended to the blockchain. Public key certificates is another interesting use case. But also we have more general systems like notary system. Here one family is timestamp services. So maybe you heard about open timestamps. So you can timestamp any document using the Bitcoin blockchain, just to prove that this document existed at a given point in time. Okay, so a very short introduction about Bitcoin mining. So we have miners, which are active participants of the Bitcoin protocol, and basically mining compute hash function. Hash function has this property that it behaves as a random function. So basically, output of the function is unpredictable, and miners to add transactions to add blocks which contain transactions. Transactions here are these colorful boxes. Need to basically compute hash over block again and again. And at some point, lucky miner can find basically output of this function, which starts with many zeros. And then this block is propagated to the network and is accepted. What is very interesting that in this process, the time is actually pretty crucial. So first of all, the notion that the time information would be really helpful to know when given transaction was appended to the blockchain, because then we can build more interesting systems based on this consensus protocol. And the second time-related aspect is that the difficulty of this process, how many zeros have to be found, also depends on time. So if the network cannot find a solution for a long time, then the protocol decreases this difficulty, so they can find this solution much easier. Okay, so what about time and freshness properties? So when we talk about freshness, we have two kind of freshness. So first notion is weak freshness. Is like order of events. We know which event was before which one, right? So we can order them. And this is provided by design, right? So we have blocks, we have block headers, and they are linked by hash function. So one header is before another one, and we can basically verify, and we have cryptographic properties for that. However, what about strong freshness, which means that for given events, we can assign actual time. So block headers in Bitcoin contain timestamp field, and whenever miner adds new block, this miner sets basically value for this timestamp field. Moreover, no time source is specified in the process. So it's pretty interesting. So here you can see like 3 headers created by 3 miners, and here the timestamps are like increasing. However, it can happen that a miner puts like conflicting timestamp in the header. right? So previous timestamp is like greater than the next one. And what to do in this case? I mean, this is really interesting because the system is decentralized. Miners are, they have equal power. It's very interesting because what happens if, for instance, this miner puts 0 as timestamp, right? Or very low or very high timestamp. So Bitcoin has this very interesting notion that new block, if there's new block, its timestamp is valid if and only if this timestamp is greater than median timestamp of the previous 11 blocks, and this timestamp minus 2 hours is less than network time. And the network time is divided as the median of the timestamp returned by all nodes connected to the node, which decides whether this is valid or invalid. And each node maintains its local Bitcoin timer defined as its local system time plus offset between this network time and this local system time. And this timer cannot be adjusted more than 70 minutes from local time. So these rules are implemented, and it's really interesting because it's like part of the consensus protocol. Okay, but what are consequences? So first, timestamps in Bitcoin can actually conflict. And the accuracy you can estimate in hours. So if you require something like in minutes, Bitcoin probably will not be able to help you. Timestamps can also differ radically from the time we use, right? So it can be, if the network tells that this is like 1971, this will be like time network in the Bitcoin. And there is no way to synchronize it with one centralized server because the network has its notion of time. Moreover, if node is synchronizing some older, if node is synchronizing the blockchain, this node has like no guarantees about time of previous blocks creation. There are many attacks, for instance, time-related attacks like time jacking. So basically just imagine you can, network powerful adversary can basically adjust this time by 70 minutes in future or in past. So it can happen then that for one miner, the time is set 70 minutes in future, for another miner in past. And then we have this rule that timestamps older than 2 hours are basically dropped. So the difference between these two miners will be like more than 2 hours. So it will be some kind of hard fork. And we also have seen like difficulty manipulation, for instance, recent attacks on Verge. Okay, so I will present a very simple mechanism how to assert on timestamps. So basically, in this mechanism, we have TSAs, which are timestamping authorities. So this is a well-known concept, and this follows like timestamp protocol, TSP. And basically, this protocol is very simple. We send some document to TSA, and this TSA returns this document with timestamp, and this information is signed by this TSA. And in our model, we have also verifier, which wishes to get provable evidence that about accuracy of Bitcoin timestamps. And this verifier is able to send Bitcoin's transaction, and he or she trusts some TSAs. Okay, so we have block with header I-1. So what the verifier does, basically he timestamps this header, right? So TSA returns this header timestamp. So then verifier publishes this timestamp header in the blockchain. So basically when new block arrives, block I, this header is appended to transactions, and verifier can get evidence that this timestamp previous header is really in the new block. And then verifier basically timestamps the new block, right? So basically with this simple sequence of events, verifier can get evidence that block I was created between these two timestamps from step 1B and 3B. Let me go into details to the protocol. So verifier takes a random value, hashes this random value with the header, and sends this output to TSA. TSA signs this output with the first timestamp T0, and then verifier computes basically hash over this value, and we call this hash, let's say, commitment. When the new block is mined, this commitment is appended to as transaction to the blockchain. So basically, verifier can get like proof that this commitment is really in the blockchain, right? And then verifier does the same with the new block, basically taking new random value, going to concatenating it with new header, going to TSA, and getting this message timestamped. So basically, now verifier has like sequence of values. And this sequence actually gives like probable evidence, and everyone can verify that, block number I was mined between timestamp T0 and T1. So we know basically when it happened according to the TSA. Okay, so as I said, with running this very simple protocol, the verifier can get probable evidence about consistency or inconsistency of timestamps. The guarantee can be improved, so there are many optimizations. So for instance, this first arrow to timestamp D0, verifier can go closer to the creation of new time to get like better accuracy. The protocol is trivial to extend to multiple timestamp sources, so we can timestamp it using like many TSAs. Also, we had this random values, and these random values were to prevent malicious miners, because otherwise malicious miner could basically censor transactions. Malicious miner could enumerate transactions going every second to TSA, and then just see commitments, pre-compute commitments. So this random value prevents that. Obviously, in practice, we have network propagation time, so it may happen that our commitment, our transaction, will appear not in the next block, but in like 2 blocks, for instance. However, with this method, you can detect like block withholding attacks or time manipulation attacks, or even malicious TSAs. Okay, so just a few notes about implementation. So you can implement this in many ways. So one step, basically you need to encode commitment in Bitcoin transaction. So here, basically, one standard way is to use like a receiver address, pay to public key hash, where this hash is basically hash of the commitment, or just use opcode, opreturn, where you can just specify it. TSA, how to implement TSAs. So there are some TSA, TSP servers. Some of them are for free, so we can basically use them and get data from them. Another interesting way is to use secure time synchronization protocols. So these protocols usually require some kind of input from user to prevent like replay attacks, and the protocol can be adjusted to use them. And what is a bit surprising, you can also use like SSL TLS servers. So if you have like secure connection with some server with specific key exchange method, input of the user is also signed with timestamp of the server, and this works is like in even 50% of servers. So you could use, for instance, Google.com server to timestamp data. Okay, so I finished my short presentation. So time-related aspects in Bitcoin blockchain are really interesting. So they are part of consensus rules. We see like real attacks. I feel that they are not well understood and not well analyzed. And also what is very important to remember is that these timestamps do not give you enough guarantees if you have like freshness sensitive application, right? It's like in hours. This is what you should assume. And with this method, you could detect like misbehaving or desynchronized nodes. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, there's a question over there.
Thank you for the presentation. In normal life, we say that time is money. Now, if money is Bitcoins, okay, So what you are saying is a change of paradigms through blockchain. Time is time and money is money.
I'm not sure do I understand.
Oh,
but
I
would
understand,
agree,
yes.
I would agree. I would agree. I would agree.
Okay.
Hey, do you see any potential abuses of this timestamp authority system? Like, first thing that comes to your mind is
Sure.
What?
I mean, sure. They are assumed trusted, right? So one extension. I mean, it's trivial to extend to like 500, for instance, servers, right? And also, I'm not sure is it like a good idea to keep them as, let's say, part of the consensus protocol. I see it rather like detection system, right? So for instance, you can get evidence that according to google.com, facebook.com, and like 100 high-profile websites, something is wrong with Bitcoin timestamp. So then maybe you would be more careful, right, with your transactions or, yeah. So this is, I see it rather like alarming system or warning system.
Thank you very much. I have actually a question. So you have been detecting, for example, block withholding attack or selfish mining in general, right? Which Gün here wrote about. First is, I think, very exciting. Have you maybe even before this work already looked at possible statistics to look at block withholding, like evidence in a sense?
No, I didn't. But this is something I have in mind for the full paper. Right, because I agree. It would be I'm interested to see how exactly it works.
Okay, great. And another question. So you focus now on Bitcoin. Can you generalize this to other open and decentralized blockchains?
Yeah, I think you can. Most of them follow. In this regard, as far as I know, most of them follow the Bitcoin's rule. So basically, you have timestamp, you have difficulty, which is some kind tied to this timestamp. You have also this notion of network time. So yeah, you could easily do that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any more questions in the audience? Yeah, here.
Yes. So one idea, which was like side idea, was to change Bitcoin mining was basically to append partial headers for the final solution, right? To solve the problem, like also with like selfish mining. And this would help, right? If we know that like 70% of hashing power, average time step over them is like very close, then for adversaries it's much difficult to manipulate this timestamp. So yeah, but it seems to be pretty difficult, right? It seems to be pretty difficult. But yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry, one more question.
I think my question is like, if the transaction is such a high value, the timestamp is very crucial. So even a smart contract can be hacked. So how do you place the trustworthiness of the TSA? That's one question. The other question is to ask the question is if there is such a possibility. So hypothetically, I'm just kind of throwing a possibility. Can you search, kind of random search, 100 search on the internet? There's a lot of internet that allows you to have time. So then it's like a trustless space.
Yeah, so the first question, trusted TSA. Yeah, that's like a very basic question, right? About trusted TSA, and they are trusted. But on the other hand, now you trust one miner which sets this value, right? So what was idea that basically you could collect from all these free sources like time synchronization servers, SSL servers, which are like millions, right? And basically like, assert Bitcoin timestamp to get like better evidence. And this is like, let's say, long-term goal. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your discussions.
Thank you.